In a distant corner of the Milky Way galaxy, the mighty Galactic Empire reigned supreme over 1,000 star systems. Led by Emperor Zorgan from his throne world of Empyrean Prime, the Empire's vast armada of warships kept the subjugated races in line through sheer military might. For centuries, no force had dared to challenge the Empire's iron grip on the galaxy. Civilizations that resisted were swiftly crushed, their worlds occupied and resources exploited for the glory of the Emperor. The Empire seemed invincible, its dominion absolute and eternal. But in the Imperial Palace, a sense of unease hung thick in the air. Reports had begun trickling in about a mysterious species from an uncharted region of space, a bipedal race called humans, from a blue planet named Earth. Imperial intelligence knew little about them, except that they had only recently achieved interstellar travel. Surely, the Emperor's advisors scoffed, such a primitive species could pose no threat to the Empire's supremacy. And yet, something about these humans deeply troubled Emperor Zorgan. There was a savage glint in their eyes, an unpredictable wildness to their nature. Zorgan sensed that underestimating them could be a fatal mistake. Unbeknownst to the Empire, the humans had been busy. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for in ingenuity and sheer audacity. In hidden shipyards scattered across a dozen systems, human engineers toiled away on a secret project, a fleet of devastatingly powerful warships, the likes of which the galaxy had never seen. Constructed from an indestructible alloy and bristling with advanced weapons, this fleet was humanity's greatest gamble. It represented decades of research, untold resources, and the unwavering conviction that they would not bend the knee to alien tyranny. Christened the Unconquerable, this fleet was the embodiment of the human spirit, defiant, unyielding, unbreakable. As humanity's doomsday fleet neared completion, an ominous calm settled over the galaxy. In his palace, Emperor Zorgan paced restlessly, his mind consumed by thoughts of the looming human threat. On Earth, Admiral Steele, the grizzled commander of the Unconquerable, prepared his crew for the great reckoning that was to come. Both sides knew that this would be no ordinary conflict. It would be a fundamental clash of alien and human, of rigid hierarchy against relentless ingenuity. The Empire's thralls awaited their master's victory and humanity's fall, never daring to dream that the reverse might be possible. But the humans were done living in fear. They were finished watching their loved ones suffer under the Empire's yoke. Now was the time to roll the dice, to stake everything on a single throw. They would topple an empire, or die trying. In the silence of space, the Unconquerable gathered like a storm on the horizon, ready to unleash fire and fury upon the unsuspecting Galactic Empire. The pieces were set, the plans laid. All waited to see which side's resolve would prove the stronger. The unstoppable force was about to meet the immovable object, and the galaxy would tremble before the coming clash of titans. This was the beginning of the end of the Empire's cruel reign, and perhaps the dawn of a new era for all life among the stars. News of the human fleet's existence slammed into the Galactic Empire like a thunderbolt. Emperor Zorgan, his worst fears realized, flew into a rage that sent his advisors scurrying for cover. The humans dared to defy him? They dared to challenge the might of the Empire? Such insolence would not stand. Zorgan summoned his most ruthless commanders and issued a single, chilling order: crush the humans. Grind their worlds to dust. Let the galaxy witness the fate of those who defy us. The Imperial war machine rumbled to life, ancient and terrible in its power. 1,000 ships, each a fortress of bristling weapons and ironclad armor, assembled in the skies above Empyrean Prime. This was the mailed fist of the Empire, honed by centuries of conquest and cruelty. At the fleet's head stood the Dominator, the Emperor's personal dreadnought. A monster of a ship, it dwarfed even the largest of its sister vessels. Upon its bridge, Zorgan brooded upon his throne, his eyes smoldering with barely contained wrath. On Earth, Admiral Steele watched the enemy's movements with a mixture of trepidation and grim determination. The Empire was taking the bait, committing the bulk of its forces to crushing the upstart humans. exactly as planned. What the Emperor didn't know was that the Unconquerable was no mere collection of ships. It was a trap centuries in the making, a cosmic snare built to bleed the Empire dry. Each vessel was a kingdom of firepower, designed to withstand the worst the enemy could throw at it. And at the fleet's heart lay a secret weapon, one that would shift the balance of galactic power forever. As the Imperial Armada bore down on Earth, Steel gave the order to engage. The Unconquerable surged forward to meet its foe, weapons primed and shields shimmering with barely contained energy. The greatest space battle in galactic history was about to unfold. In the silence between breaths, before the fury was unleashed, a strange thought flickered through Admiral Steele's mind, a half-remembered quote from some ancient text, "Whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad with power." The Emperor, blinded by his own arrogance, couldn't see the trap he was stumbling into. His rule had always been based on fear and brute strength. He'd never faced an enemy fueled by an idea, the notion that sentient beings had the right to live free from tyranny. That idea, Steele reflected, was humanity's true secret weapon. It was what had propelled them to the stars, what had forged the Unconquerable in the white heat of determination. It was an idea more powerful than any warship, more enduring than any empire. As the first salvos were exchanged and space lit up with the fire of 1,000 suns, Steele allowed himself a tight smile. Let the Emperor come. Let him hurl his legions at the bulwark of human defiance. One way or another, this mad cycle of galactic oppression would end here. The Unconquerable would break the Empire, or shatter gloriously in the attempt. For in the end, it was better to die on one's feet than live 1,000 years on one's knees. The battle was joined, the fate of a galaxy hanging in the balance. And amid the fire and fury, a new legend was about to be written, the legend of the humans who dared to stand against an emperor. The battle raged across the stars, the Imperial fleet and the Unconquerable locked in a deadly embrace. Ships on both sides erupted into blossoms of fire, their crews consumed by the merciless vacuum of space. But for every human vessel that fell, it seemed to take a dozen Imperial ships with it. Emperor Zorgan watched the unfolding carnage with growing disbelief and rage. The humans were fighting with a ferocity and skill that defied belief. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their tactics more unpredictable. It was as if they had spent centuries preparing for this very moment. In a way, Zorgan realized with a sinking feeling, they had. The humans had played a long game, hiding their strength, biding their time. And now, with the bulk of the Imperial fleet committed, they had sprung their trap. But the Emperor still had one card left to play. With a snarl, he gave the order to launch the Empire's ultimate weapon, a planet killer, a device capable of reducing whole worlds to rubble. If he couldn't have the galaxy, he would burn it to ashes. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Steele watched the planet killer emerge from the heart of the Imperial formation. It was a monstrous thing, a construct of nightmare and malice. But Steele had known it was coming. The Empire's cruelty was nothing if not predictable. With a calm born of certainty, Steele gave the order to activate the Unconquerable's secret weapon. Deep within each human ship, a strange device began to glow, pulsing with an eerie blue light. These were no ordinary power sources, but something far more profound, something salvaged from the wreckage of an ancient, unimaginably advanced alien civilization. As the devices reached critical mass, space itself seemed to warp and twist around the human fleet. The Unconquerable became ghostly, ethereal, as if fading into another dimension. Imperial weapons fire passed harmlessly through their hulls, while human weapons seemed to strike with impossible force. Zorgan watched in horror as his planet killer's beam, capable of shattering continents, bent and refracted around the human ships, leaving them unscathed. It was as if the very laws of physics had been rewritten, turned against the Empire in its moment of greatest need. In that instant, the Emperor understood the magnitude of his error. He had underestimated the humans, had failed to grasp the depths of their resolve and ingenuity. And now, with his ultimate weapon useless and his fleet in disarray, he faced the unthinkable prospect of defeat. Across the Imperial fleet, chaos reigned as human ships tore through their formations like wraiths. Panic spread like wildfire as the once mighty armada began to crumble, ship by ship, battlegroup by battlegroup. On Earth, crowds watched the distant battle with a mixture of awe and disbelief. For so long, the Empire had seemed an unstoppable force, a dark shadow over the galaxy. And yet here, at the 11th hour, the impossible was happening. The humans were winning. In the heart of the chaos, Admiral Steele allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The plan, decades in the making, had worked. The Empire's power was broken, its fleet shattered. A new dawn was breaking over the galaxy. But even as victory loomed, Steele knew the hardest part was yet to come. The Empire would not go quietly. Zorgan, for all his cruelty, was still a formidable foe. There would be battles yet to come, worlds to liberate, a galaxy to rebuild. But for now, in this moment of triumph, Steele allowed himself to hope. The dream of freedom, so long denied, was finally within reach. And with the power of the unconquerable at their back, the humans would not rest until that dream became reality. The battle was won, but the war for the galaxy's soul had only just begun. In the aftermath of the great battle, the shattered remnants of the Imperial fleet limped back to Empyrean Prime. The once proud armada was a shadow of its former self, its ships battered and its crews demoralized. But Emperor Zorgan's fury burned hotter than ever. Faced with the unthinkable prospect of defeat, the Emperor played his final card. From the depths of his palace, he unleashed his personal guard, the Praetorians, genetically engineered super soldiers fanatically loyal to the throne. If the Empire could not prevail through force of arms, it would drown the galaxy in blood. As the Praetorians fanned out across the Empire's worlds, they left a trail of carnage in their wake. Populations that had dared to hope for freedom were brutally suppressed, made examples of in the most horrific ways imaginable. The Emperor's message was clear: resistance was futile, and would be met with annihilation. But the humans and their allies would not be cowed. Buoyed by their victory, they pressed their advantage, liberating world after world from the Empire's grasp. The unconquerable, no longer bound by the need for secrecy, openly challenged imperial rule wherever it found it. At the forefront of this crusade was Admiral Steele, his legend growing with each passing day. To the oppressed peoples of the galaxy, he became a symbol of hope, a beacon of defiance against the darkness. And to the Empire, he became the embodiment of their deepest fears. Desperate to stem the tide, Emperor Zorgan recalled his Praetorians to Empyrean Prime. If the heart of the Empire fell, all would be lost. The stage was set for a final confrontation, a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. As the human fleet approached Empyrean Prime, they found the planet transformed into a fortress. Thousands of defense platforms orbited the world, bristling with weapons. Legions of Imperial ships formed a wall of steel around their emperor's domain. And on the surface, the Praetorians stood ready, an army of living weapons sworn to fight to the last. But the humans had a weapon of their own: hope. As news of their coming spread, the downtrodden peoples of Empyrean Prime rose up in rebellion. Slaves and servants, technicians and bureaucrats, all those who had suffered under the Empire's yoke took up arms against their masters. As the battle above the planet raged, a second front opened on the surface. The Praetorians, unaccustomed to facing resistance from those they considered beneath them, found themselves beset on all sides. For all their genetic enhancements and advanced weaponry, they were still only human, and they bled just the same. In the chaos, Admiral Steele saw his chance. With a strike team of his most skilled warriors, he infiltrated the Imperial Palace itself. Their mission: to capture Emperor Zorgan and end his reign of terror once and for all. Through the opulent halls of the palace they fought, past defenses both technological and biological. The Emperor's guard, loyal to the end, threw themselves at the invaders with reckless abandon. But Steel and his team would not be denied. In the throne room, they found Zorgan waiting, a mad king presiding over the ruin of his empire. The emperor fought with the strength of desperation, his Praetorian enhancements making him a formidable opponent. But in the end, he was no match for the determination of free beings fighting for a just cause. As Zorgan fell, a cheer went up from the human fleet, echoed by the newly liberated peoples of Empyrean Prime. The empire, that vast edifice of cruelty and oppression, had fallen at last. A new era had dawned, one of freedom and self-determination for all beings. But even as they celebrated, Admiral Steel and his allies knew their work was far from over. The empire had left a legacy of suffering and chaos that would take generations to undo. But with the unconquerable at their side, they would not rest until the galaxy was truly free. The legend of the humans, the defiers of emperors and liberators of the oppressed, was just beginning. And the stars themselves trembled at the thought of what they might achieve. In the wake of the empire's fall, a strange quiet settled over the galaxy. For the first time in living memory, the specter of tyranny had been lifted, and countless worlds found themselves free to chart their own destinies. But freedom, as Admiral Steel and his allies soon discovered, was a double-edged sword. The Empire, for all its cruelty, had provided a certain stability, a galactic order that had endured for centuries. Now, with that order shattered, ancient rivalries and conflicts bubbled to the surface, threatening to plunge the galaxy into a new era of chaos. As the Unconquerable took on the role of galactic peacekeeper, Steel found himself grappling with the complexities of nation-building on a cosmic scale. Worlds that had been subject to the Empire's rule for generations struggled to establish new governments, new identities. Some descended into civil war, old factions vying for control in the power vacuum left by the Empire's collapse. Through it all, the humans and their allies worked tirelessly to foster a new galactic community, one based on cooperation and mutual respect rather than fear and domination. They mediated disputes, provided aid and resources to struggling worlds, and stood as a bulwark against those who sought to exploit the galactic turmoil for their own gain. At the heart of this effort was a new organization, the Galactic Alliance, with Admiral Steel as its first elected leader. Comprised of representatives from across the galaxy, the Alliance sought to build a framework for peaceful coexistence, a forum where all beings could come together to resolve their differences and work towards common goals. It was an uphill battle, fraught with setbacks and challenges. There were those who resisted the idea of a galactic government, seeing it as a threat to their own power and autonomy. Others, scarred by the trauma of imperial rule, were wary of any authority, no matter how benevolent its intentions. But slowly, steadily, progress was made. Trade routes were established, linking once isolated worlds in a web of mutual prosperity. Cultural exchanges fostered understanding and empathy among vastly different species. And the Unconquerable, once a symbol of human defiance, became a beacon of hope and stability for all. Through it all, Admiral Steel led with a steady hand and an unwavering commitment to the ideals that had brought the Empire down. He knew that the path ahead would be long and difficult, that the scars left by the Empire's rule would take generations to heal. But he also knew that the alternative, a return to the old ways of tyranny and oppression, was unthinkable. As the galaxy began to knit itself back together, as old wounds began to heal and new bonds were forged, Steel allowed himself to feel a sense of cautious optimism. The dream that had sustained the Unconquerable through its darkest hours, the dream of a galaxy united in peace and freedom, no longer seemed like an impossible fantasy. There would be challenges ahead, Steel knew. There would be threats to face, both from within and without. But the galaxy had proven that when its people stood together, when they were guided by the light of hope and the strength of their convictions, there was no force in the universe that could stand against them. And so, as a new dawn broke over the galaxy, Admiral Steel and the Unconquerable looked to the future with renewed determination. They had won their greatest victory, had brought an empire to its knees. Now, the true work began, the work of building, of healing, of creating a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. It was a daunting task, but one they embraced with open hearts and unwavering resolve. For they knew that the story of the galaxy, the story of the defiant humans and their impossible dream, was only just beginning. And the stars themselves trembled with anticipation at the thought of what the next chapter might bring. Years turned into decades, and the galaxy flourished under the guidance of the Galactic Alliance. The old wounds left by the Empire slowly healed, and a new generation grew up never knowing the fear and oppression that had once been the norm. But even as the galaxy prospered, Admiral Steele could not shake a sense of unease. He had lived too long, seen too much, to believe that peace was ever permanent. And as reports began to trickle in of strange happenings on the fringes of known space, his old instincts stirred to life. Ships were going missing, whole colonies vanishing without a trace. There were whispers of a new power rising in the shadows, a force that even the unconquerable could not stand against. Some spoke of a return of the old ways, of a resurgent empire seeking to reclaim its lost glory. Steele knew better. The empire was gone, its ashes scattered to the cosmic winds. But something else was out there, something ancient and unknowable, and it had set its sights on the fragile peace the galaxy had fought so hard to achieve. As the mystery deepened, Steele found himself drawn back into the fray, leading a new generation of the unconquerable on a desperate mission to uncover the truth. They journeyed to the edge of known space and beyond, into regions uncharted and unknown. What they found there defied explanation. Ancient ruins of civilizations long extinct, technology far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. And at the heart of it all, a shadow that seemed to swallow light itself, a presence that whispered with 1,000 voices and hungered with an insatiable appetite. It was a force older than the stars themselves, a cosmic horror that had slumbered for eons and now stirred to wakefulness. It had no name, no form that mortal minds could comprehend. But one thing was clear, it posed a threat to everything the galaxy held dear. Steele and his crew fought with the courage of desperation, employing every weapon and tactic at their disposal. They forged new alliances, rallied the Galactic Alliance to their cause. Species that had once been bitter enemies came together in the face of this shared threat, united by a common desire to protect their way of life. But the enemy they faced was unlike any they had ever encountered. It seemed to twist reality itself, to warp the very fabric of space and time. Battles were fought not just with weapons, but with the power of the mind, as the shadow sought to corrupt and control all who stood against it. Through it all, Admiral Steele stood firm, a beacon of hope in the gathering darkness. He had faced impossible odds before, had brought an empire to its knees through sheer force of will. And he would not falter now, not with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. In the end, it was not strength of arms that won the day, but the power of unity, of countless beings standing together against a common foe. The shadow was driven back, banished to the void from whence it had come. But the cost was high, and the scars it left would linger for generations. As the galaxy rebuilt once more, as life slowly returned to normal, Admiral Steele knew that his work was not yet done. The shadow had been defeated, but not destroyed. It would return one day, seeking to finish what it had started. And when that day came, Steele vowed, the galaxy would be ready. The unconquerable would stand watch, the Galactic Alliance would be vigilant. And the legacy of the humans, the defiers of emperors and bringers of hope, would endure, a shining light against the darkness. For in the end, the greatest weapon the galaxy possessed was not a ship or a soldier, but the unbreakable spirit of its people, and the unwavering belief that no matter how dark the night, dawn would always come again. As the years turned to centuries, the story of the humans and their defiance of the Galactic Empire passed into legend. Children across the galaxy grew up on tales of Admiral Steele and the Unconquerable, of the great battles fought and the sacrifices made in the name of freedom. But even as the specifics faded into myth and memory, the core of the story remained, passed down from generation to generation. It was a tale of courage in the face of tyranny, of hope in the darkest of times. It was a reminder that no matter how vast the universe, no matter how powerful the forces arrayed against them, the spirit of sentient beings could never be truly conquered. And though the Galactic Alliance faced many challenges in the years to come, though new enemies and old rose to threaten the peace, the legacy of the humans endured. Their example inspired countless others to stand up against oppression, to fight for their beliefs no matter the cost. In the grand halls of the Alliance's capital, a great monument was erected, a testament to all those who had given their lives in the cause of freedom. At its base were inscribed the names of the fallen, a roll call of heroes stretching back to the first human settlers who had dared to defy an empire. And at the monument's center stood a statue of Admiral Steele, his gaze fixed forever on the stars. In one hand, he held a beacon, a symbol of the light the unconquerable had brought to the galaxy's darkest hour. And in the other, a simple plaque, bearing a message that would echo through the ages. To all those who follow, remember, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. The duty to protect it falls to us all. As new generations came of age, as they took their place among the stars, they did so with the weight of this legacy on their shoulders. They were the inheritors of a dream, the custodians of a promise made long ago on a distant, blue world. And though the galaxy would face many trials in the centuries to come, though darkness would always lurk at the edges of the light, the spirit of the humans, the indomitable will that had brought an empire to its knees, would never be forgotten. For as long as there were those who remembered, as long as there were those willing to stand up and fight for what they believed in, the legacy of the unconquerable would endure. And the galaxy would forever be a brighter place for it. In the end, that was the true gift the humans had given the cosmos. Not just a military victory, not just an end to tyranny, but a vision of what was possible when sentient beings stood together, united by a common dream. It was a vision of a galaxy where every voice was heard, every life valued. A galaxy where the strong protected the weak, where differences were celebrated rather than feared. A galaxy where hope, always, triumphed over despair. And as the statue of Admiral Steele stood watch over the stars, as the beacon in his hand shone out across the void, it served as an eternal reminder of that vision, and of the indomitable spirit that had made it real. For in the final analysis, the story of the humans and their impossible victory was not just a tale of war and conquest. It was a testament to the power of an idea, to the unquenchable fire of the sentient spirit. And as long as that spirit endured, as long as there were those willing to fan its flames and follow where it led, the galaxy would never truly know darkness again.